So as we wait for more to join, we're seeing a ton pop in right now. I'm just going to review some of the events that we have going on as of July. Today's CPR and Saftey Session is the last session for parent resources and caregiving resources for June. So July, we have our last month of parent discussion. I believe it's our last month of parent discussion groups broken out by age group. And then we are starting a new, this was really in conjunction with our Whole Brain series. So we're starting a bit of a new process, and I'm going to let Judeanne Heath, our program director, really make a more formal announcement on what we're going to be doing for that for anyone who is interested in joining. So what we have coming up is on the 13th, we have, so the smaller discussion groups are going to be between the 13th and, the 8th and the 13th. And then on the 13th, we have care planning, core care office hours, helping people with planning for back to school care sessions or primary and after school care support. On the 15th, we have empowering and engaging caregivers in the workforce. That's going to be led by Whitney Hawthorne, and she's the founder of the Savvy Working Mom. On the 20th, we have going back to in-person school, Q&A sessions for parents and caregivers, and then Thursday Q&A session for parents and caregivers on the 22nd. And then we have continuously, please feel free to check out our resources page. We have a lot of cool resources up there, including other safety and CPR sessions of different themes you may have missed in the past. So I'm going to introduce, of course, Kim Murray. If you haven't been with us before for CPR and Saftey, she is our facilitator. She's an RN and has a bachelor's degree in mathematical science and a master's degree in nursing and clinical leadership. She loves teaching and has taught at prestigious nursing schools such as the University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins University. She's worked for the American Red Cross and was a nurse at the U.S. Naval Academy, and she brings a wide range of experiences as a medical educator. And she's with the DISC Foundation, who so generously offers complimentary CPR and safety sessions. So we love hosting this monthly here. And then please feel free to reach out. She always has a code for complimentary CPR certification beyond this class. So, and I will let her share that code with you. So I'm going to hand it off to Kim right now so she can get started without further ado in the session. Oh, I'm seeing there's a chat. So Lorena Castaneda has asked about those details. I want to make sure that I haven't missed which details you were referencing. So please feel free to message here. Anyone use the Q&A or the chat box throughout the session, and I will make sure to gather questions at the end of the session for Kim related to CPR and Saftey, and then I can do my best to answer questions related to parent resources and caregiving resources. So I will hand it off to Kim right now, and then we will hop to it.
Hi, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And we're gonna get started. I do have a presentation for you with some videos about CPR, and our topic this month is heat injuries, which is heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and how to tell the difference between those and what to do if that happens and how to avoid that. So like she mentioned, this is being sponsored by the DISC Foundation. I'm a nurse. I live in Maryland, right outside of DC, and I'm the medical educator for the DISC Foundation. Their sole purpose was created here to empower others to save lives. So that's my job. I get to teach any person or individual around the world that wants to learn more about CPR. And it's a great project, also sponsored by the Save a Life initiative. And you'll see that on our website, which I will show you at the end of the presentation, savealife.com. And I will be giving you a code, like she mentioned, so that you can log on to the website, and then you can sign up and take CPR certification for free for yourself. And it also includes first aid. So when you take the certification and you complete it, you can download a provider card, and then that's good for 2 years. So that's a great offer that they have here. So why are we here? Why do we learn CPR? Of course, we want to save lives. And if you don't do CPR on a regular basis, it can be scary. So I want to help people learn more about it. And hopefully some of this will stick and just help you if you're ever in an emergency situation. So in the United States, in 1 year, we had 300,000 people who had a cardiac arrest out of the hospital, and their survival to discharge rate was 10%. So that's not very high. That's normal, but it's not very high. In the hospital, it's a little higher if people have a cardiac arrest because we have healthcare providers and equipment readily available. That's about 20%. So you can see that the survival rate of a cardiac arrest is just not very high. We are hoping with more CPR in the community that we can increase that rate, and using AEDs, which are more available for adults if they're needed, can increase that rate closer to 40%. People are, of course, scared anytime this would happen. Again, if you don't practice and do it on a regular basis, the first thing we need to watch out for is making sure that the scene is safe. If you're indoors and you come across a child that is unconscious laying on the ground, we have to determine if they are responsive and if they need CPR. We need to make sure the scene is safe. And so you have to take that few seconds as you're coming up to a child and figure out what happened just by looking around, smelling, hearing, and trying to see, did they fall off of something? Did they get into something poisonous? Was there a drowning? So we have to determine that just very quickly. If you're outside, you need to, of course, look and see, was there some sort of disaster, car accident, weather, things like that. So we want you to be safe and check before you run in and help so that you don't also become a victim yourself. People are, of course, afraid of getting a disease from someone, and especially now with a pandemic, we're not suggesting mouth-to-mouth resuscitation anymore. You can choose to do that if it's a loved one and you want to. Otherwise, we suggest that you have a CPR mask available. They do have filters in them, and I'll show you one later when we talk about ventilations. And that will prevent any viruses from passing from person to person. So the key takeaway here is to use your PPE, make sure you have gloves available, and even a gown or goggles if you're concerned about that. People are also worried about liability if they jump into a situation with strangers and are attempting first aid or CPR. But in America, we have the Good Samaritan Act, and it does protect people who make a reasonable attempt to help in an emergency. So if you've called 911 and you're following along with the directions, or you've taken a CPR course and you're trying to do CPR, even if the person dies, you're not going to be held liable for trying to help. So hopefully that will help you rest a little bit easier. Some people do die anyway. We saw that the survival rate is low when somebody goes into cardiac arrest. So you don't need to worry about killing someone, because remember, cardiac arrest, their heart is not working. So they will die if we don't do anything. If we try and it still doesn't work, at least we've tried, but we can try and have that percentage of people that will come back to a regular heart rhythm. People do worry about hurting them. I do get the question often about breaking a rib, and that does happen. That happens to first responders all the time too. The more frail the person is, or elderly, or they have osteoporosis, that's when that's more likely to happen, not so much in children, but it definitely can happen at any point. It doesn't mean you're doing CPR incorrectly. And again, the person would rather, have their heart maintained and get to breathing again and then have to heal from a broken rib than have us do anything at all. If you're unsure of your skills, then I'm glad you're here today, and hopefully learning something new, and then you can always go to our website and review anything that you want to. So we're going to follow this pediatric chain of survival, and these are the steps to help someone get through CPR. The most important thing, you'll see that first step is preventing cardiac arrest. With children, injuries are the #1 cause of death. So if we can prevent them, we can prevent being in this CPR situation. And that means childproofing and always watching the children. If we recognize that something is wrong, we need to activate our emergency medical system by calling 911 and performing CPR right away. That's within 10 seconds, recognizing that they need it and starting right away. These next 3 steps are for our healthcare providers, whether we have an ambulance or a paramedic or drive them to the ER, and then the child would be in a cardiac unit and then in cardiac recovery after that, which takes a few months. So CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and we are combining the rescue breathing and the chest compressions to support the heart and lung when they're not working on their own. So we're literally pushing on that bone on top of the chest, which is actually squeezing the heart. The heart is not pumping or beating on its own. And when we squeeze it, we're pushing the blood out, and it goes to the arms and legs and the brain, which is our most important organ here. And it will keep that oxygen going until we get further life support on board. We do already have oxygen in our blood circulating if we would collapse. So that's why you'll hear me say that rescue breaths are not that important anymore. Based on the studies that we've done, you can decide to do hands-only CPR, or if this is a stranger and you don't have a mask and you don't want to do mouth to mouth, that's totally fine. We're going to get almost the same effect with just doing the chest compressions. So for children, they are more likely to have respiratory problems that will cause respiratory distress, then respiratory arrest, where they stop breathing and their heart might still be beating, and then cardiac arrest because they're not getting oxygen anymore. So it does follow a path. Children are more likely to have, asthma, anaphylaxis, choking, drowning, illness. They are more susceptible. And, even with newborns, like if they get a cold, that might just be a cold in an older child, but it can cause breathing problems in an infant. So we're going to pause here and look at our first video of recognizing an emergency and deciding to act.
Can you believe they're catching the game last night? It was amazing. I thought it was over. I was ready to turn the TV off and go to bed. Well, they got lucky. They had no business winning that game. Look, a win is a win. Yeah, right. Oh, check him out. I think we should break out some scooters on the way to work. I can definitely see you breaking something on one of those. Yeah, you're right. Hello? I gotta get to the office. Me too. All right. Yeah. We'll get those documents over to your office later today, then we can discuss where to go from there. Sound good?
Help! Help! Look. Joey, are you okay? Help! Help! Someone help my son, please! Joey, are you okay? Oh.
Joey, are you okay? Joey, are you okay? Call 911. Get an AED and first aid kit right away.
Yeah, we have those upstairs. Joey!
It's okay, ma'am. He's on the phone with 911. Did you see your son fall?
It all happened so fast, I'm not even sure what happened.
Did anyone else see what happened?
Yeah, I saw the whole thing. It just collapsed out of nowhere.
Was your son complaining about not feeling well earlier today, or?
He said that his stomach hurt. I said we shouldn't go, but he really wanted to ride a scooter. I should have made him stay home.
Does he have any allergies?
No, he has no allergies.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to go through the steps of CPR. And just want to point out the first step, if you're a visual person, and then we'll go through the list if you like to read it, is making sure that scene is safe. So we're assuming that they've checked, they're outside, and they don't see any danger. And the next is, you'll see him doing this. Hey, are you okay? So we're tapping really hard on the shoulders and saying, hey, are you okay? And if you hear their name or know their name, add that in there, because that can really help. He heard the mom call his name, so he added that in there. And then this child, let's see, was—
Are you okay?
Right there. So he moved his eyes a little bit and moved his head. So he's responsive. So I don't need to do CPR, but they're deciding to call 911, get the AED and the first aid kit, which is a good idea because we might need all of those in the next few minutes. And the mother didn't know why he collapsed. So this child is going to go to the hospital and just get checked out and see what's going on. It actually could be heat exhaustion, which we're going to cover in a little bit. So the written list here is the scene safe. Check for responsiveness by saying, hey, are you okay? If they are responsive in any way, then we're going to just wait with them. So CPR is for when we are not responsive. So if there's no movement, no eye movement, no mumbling, they are just unconscious. Then we're going to next check and see if they are breathing normally. And you take a few seconds, just 5 to 10 seconds, and you're just looking, do they look like they're sleeping? Okay. And if we don't have to leave the scene, like there's other people around, or you have your cell phone and you can put it on speakerphone if you're by yourself, then you just call for 911 right there and start CPR while you're calling. They might even be asking you a few questions while you're starting chest compressions, and then they'll be able to walk you through and help you time that, just to help you out. It's helpful to have another person there if you would be by yourself. So the ratio for children is 15 chest compressions and then do 2 rescue breaths. And we continue that at that rate until one of these other things happens. This is for infants and children, and then all the way up through teenagers. Teenagers can be included in our adult CPR ratios. So basically, if anybody's over like 100 pounds or 5 feet tall, that's kind of what puts them over into the adult category, so that late middle school, high school child will be old enough to do adult ratios, which the difference is, I'll show you in a second. It's only really one thing that's different. So we're going to continue CPR for 2 minutes. We switch providers every 2 minutes. So if you do have another person there that knows CPR, you want to be timing and switch at the 2 minutes. That prevents you from getting fatigued, even if you feel fine. The studies have found that the compressions start getting a little, weaker and slower after 2 minutes. So 2 minutes is a good time to switch. And then we are going to keep going until either somebody brings an AED and you want to put the pads on, or you see signs of life. We will check at the 2 minute mark and just see if they are responsive. The scene becomes unsafe and you need to leave, and then you can decide if you're able to bring the victim with you, or if you're too tired, continue. That would be after 20 minutes. Generally, if you were by yourself and there's no help coming at all, that would be an appropriate time to stop or take a break. Now, the note here with number 8, if you were by yourself and did not have a phone, that would be, your phone didn't work, or the battery was dead, you're out on a hike with a child and you're nowhere near any kind of help within 15 to 20 minutes. That's when you want to leave the scene. They would like you to do CPR for 2 minutes first. because of children often having the respiratory issue that causes the cardiac arrest, this can often just jumpstart, bring someone back and give them that boost that they need. Now for infants, the difference is that we are gonna flick the bottom of their foot like this. So taking off whatever is on their foot and flicking it, because their shoulders, they're just, you know, like kind of squishy and unstable. So it's more painful for them to flick on their foot, and we're trying to wake them up. Everything else is the same there for infants. So I'm going to show you a CPR overview video next.
You okay?
Hey, are you okay?
After confirming that someone is unresponsive and not breathing or only gasping, assume cardiac arrest and begin CPR.
He's unresponsive.
Ensure the person is on his back on a firm, flat surface such as the ground. Next, kneel beside him and place the heel of one hand in the center of his chest, with your other hand on top. Interlace your fingers and make sure they are up off the chest. Position your body so that your shoulders are directly over your hands. With this technique, you can use your body weight to help compress the chest. Now, give 30 chest compressions. Keeping your arms straight, push down at least 2 inches, then let the chest return to its normal position. Continue to push hard and fast, giving compressions at a rate of between 100 and 120 compressions per minute. For a child, push down about 2 inches. And for a smaller child, you may only need to perform chest compressions with one hand. Next, give 2 rescue breaths. First, place a breathing barrier over the person's nose and mouth. Then, open the airway by putting one hand on the forehead and 2 fingers on the bony part of the chin and tilting the head back to a past neutral position. For a child, you'll only need to tilt the head to a slightly past neutral position. Pinch the nose shut, take a normal breath, and make a complete seal over the person's mouth with your mouth. Blow for about 1 second while looking to see that the chest rises. Take another breath, make a seal, and give a second rescue breath.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Continue giving sets of 30 chest compressions and 2 rescue breaths until you notice an obvious sign of life. An AED is ready to use and no other trained responders are available. You have performed 5 sets of CPR and another trained responder is available to switch.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6.
You have performed 5 sets of CPR on a child. You are alone and need to call 911. EMS personnel take over. You are alone and too tired to continue. Or the scene becomes unsafe.
1 and 2
At the AED and for safety.
All right, looking at our list again. Hopefully you can remember the steps. Is the scene safe? A, are you okay? Check to see if they're breathing, calling 911, and then starting CPR. Our ratio is 15 and 2 for children and infants. So for adults, again, the only difference here we're going to do is 30 and 2. So the 15 and 2 gives us more ventilations if you're doing them for children and infants because they are more likely to have a respiratory problem than have a heart attack, for example. So the chest compressions are the same for everybody. You put one hand in front of the other. You can interlock the hands. It doesn't matter which one you do first. And you put them in the center of the chest. We want to be on the sternum, on the breastbone. We're compressing at a rate of 100 to 120 per minute. We use that song Staying Alive, which is the correct rate if you can sing that in your head. The depth is based on the size or age of the person, and we don't measure. It just means we're trying to go less than halfway down, and we're going to go lighter the smaller the person is. Allow for complete chest recoil. So you want to make sure you're going down and coming back up the whole way each time, and not just kind of staying down when you're pushing and just kind of quivering there. The victim needs to be on a firm, flat surface. So if they collapse and, or are passed out in a crib or a bed or couch or anything like that, we need to put them on the floor and then kneel so that we can have something hard that's helping us push the heart. And we are always minimizing these interruptions for less than 10 seconds. So if you're doing rescue breaths, less than 10 seconds. If we're checking to see if they're breathing, less than 10 seconds. If we would have an AED and we're putting pads on, less than 10 seconds. So very, very quick. Chest compressions is the most important thing. So to open the airway, you saw the head tilt, chin lift in the video. Grab my mask. And then we use the jaw thrust if we do not, if we're not able to do that first one, because we're suspecting a head, neck, or spinal injury. So that just means try to open the mouth just with the jaw and create space, and don't move the neck at all. So now you want to create a tight seal. For children and infants, if they're very small, you can put your mouth over their mouth and nose. If they're older, then you can do it just over their mouth, and then you have to pinch their nose, just watching, because air will come out there first. You saw in the video, they were using our plastic shield, and it does have this, let's see if I can get it, this little filter in the middle. You can purchase these anywhere, just Google it, and they have little ear elastics, that you would put over the person, and you would put this on the victim, and then you are breathing through that filter, and then that will protect you from diseases. It's a one-way filter, so air can go through, but it cannot come back out. It will kind of go out the sides by their ears. And these come in little, keychain packs, so you can have one with you available or throw it in a bag. I like this one. I keep in my car with my first aid kit. And so I would use this if there would be any emergency that I would come across. And these are, a little more expensive, $25, $30. But again, you can Google, you can get it from Red Cross, any company, or just on Amazon, they have them. And this is what you see, like a lifeguard would have these on their pocket. You just pop it out, and then you're breathing into this top part and putting this on the person. So there's a little triangle part goes on their nose. And then you breathe through there. And so this is just easier to use. It keeps you further away from the person if you don't know them. And then it also has that filter inside there where I can breathe through it, but the air will not come back out. So that's a really nice feature to have. And this just makes me feel better having this in the car. So I know that I have it if I need it. The bag mask is what the ambulance will have, the paramedic. So we're going to attempt 2 breaths. The chest should rise if we're holding that neck back and breathing in and have a really good seal. You have to hold the mask on or make sure the air is not coming out the mouth or the nose. If it doesn't work, we reposition everything and fix the mask and try it again. If it doesn't work the second time, we just move on and go back to chest compressions because they might have an obstruction, or maybe we're doing it wrong. It doesn't matter. Because like I said, the most important thing is chest compression. So we just don't fool with the airway that much. If you know how to do it and you have a barrier device and you're okay with it, then you do it. If not, you just skip it. So we're going to take a look at choking next. For adults and children, which is basically everybody over age 1, like over 12 months, we're going to do the abdominal thrust, which many of you already know how to know. You make a fist and put your hand over it, and then you just come around behind the person and put your fist in their stomach. We're trying to use some physics here to push on their stomach, which will have air or food contents, and that will push air up the breathing tube, and then hopefully whatever's there will just come out. If they are coughing or making any noise, we encourage them to keep going. We don't jump in at that point, but be ready. If they then stop making noise, that's when they are completely choking, and we need to step in and do the abdominal thrusts. If they are coughing and there's noise when they're coughing or they're making any noise, that means air is getting through the trachea, which is the airway. So that's how we know they're breathing. But then if they start going, coughing, but no sound is coming out, then they are officially choking. For infants, if we can hold that infant like in our hands, like a little baby, then they are small enough to do the back slaps and the chest thrusts. Now the difference here is we can do back slaps because I can put their head down, and so when I hit them on their back, the food will come out. We don't do it on people that are sitting upright because I might kind of make food come up, but it's just gonna sit back down. I could actually make it worse and it could go farther. Also, the chest thrusts are the same as chest compressions. I'm using 2 or 3 fingers and I'm on the bone of the infant's chest, not in the abdomen. Their abdomens are too like underdeveloped and squishy that if I push on them, nothing's really going to happen. So here's a quick video to show you the placement.
If an infant is conscious but choking, deliver 5 chest thrusts using the 2-finger technique, resting the infant against your forearm and thigh. Turn the infant over and deliver 5 back slaps. Continue alternating 5 chest thrusts and 5 back slaps until the airway obstruction has been removed. Make sure to support the infant's head and neck when delivering the chest thrusts and back slaps. If the infant becomes unconscious at any time, begin CPR.
All right, so we're going to move on and look at our heat exhaustion. We're almost done. Thanks for hanging in there. We've been doing a different topic every month, and we've covered some of these so far. They're in your library. And this month, we're going to talk about heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And just remembering that for children, age 1 through teenagers, injury is the leading cause of death. So we want to try to prevent these from happening and minimize them if at all possible. So a little backstory on the heat exhaustion and heat stroke. The body normally cools by sweating. So as long as you don't have any disorder with sweating, this is something that can happen to anybody, basically. The high body temperature, which, just like a high fever, they're basically the same thing, can damage the organs, including the brain. So we know that, getting a high temperature, even to 103, 104, 105, you need to be in the ER by that point if you aren't already. It can go 106, 107 degrees, but that is, can be fatal. So actually being outside in the heat, especially with high humidity, that is affecting our ability to sweat. So we're actually in heat exhaustion and heat stroke, we're actually increasing our body temperature. That's what's so dangerous about it. If you take the temperature of somebody who passes out from heat stroke, it can be 104, 105, 106, and that's an emergency. So that's the mechanism behind it there. This list is people that are going to have more trouble with heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and also who are more susceptible to it. So elderly and the youth, our preschoolers and infants, because we don't always sweat the same way in those age categories, and also not able to say what's happening to us, not communicating as well. Obesity, if you already have a fever, if you're already dehydrated, heart disease or mental illness, poor circulation, if you already have sunburn, that's going to be worse if you have heat exhaustion, or certain prescription drugs and certainly alcohol or drug use will affect your ability to sweat and also to say what's going on. And even prescription drug use, there's some that are photosensitive, so the sun affects you more. I remember taking an antibiotic last year and was just sitting outside at the pool. I had shorts and t-shirt on and I had sunscreen on, and I got a burn like I've never had before. It was almost like sun poisoning. It was very, very painful. And I hadn't realized that the medication I was taking, actually caused that. It was like a magnifying glass onto my leg. It was a very strange situation. So learned my lesson on that one. So I want to spend a minute here. This is our infographic from the CDC. So there's lots of good information there on the heat-related illnesses. So if you start at the bottom, heat cramps, you want to take that seriously. Heavy sweating or the muscle pain or a spasm, if you know what that feels like, but it feels like pain, it feels like a Charlie horse, and can happen in your legs, but that's the one where you also get in your abdomen, where basically on your side, like if you're running and you're like, oh, my side hurts, that's actually, a muscle cramp, a heat cramp. And so it doesn't have to be 100 degrees out. It just has to be high humidity. It could be a lower temperature, but you're exercising very much, or it could be a higher temperature and you're just walking. So either one of those combinations can cause all of this to start. So if you do get that heat cramp from exercising, you need to take it seriously and go to air conditioning, drink anything, water, sports drink, Gatorade, and don't keep going. Take that seriously. And, some of you remember growing up, I definitely remember growing up where, we ignored these kinds of things, and your parents were harder on you and your coaches, and they would just say, get back in there. But we've definitely seen, students, athletes die from heat exhaustion. So we definitely have to take it seriously. So then in the middle with heat exhaustion, that's our next step. And I always remember, because heat stroke is the worst, because a stroke affects your brain. So if you're ever wondering which one's worse, exhaustion is first and then stroke is worse after that. So heat exhaustion, still sweating a lot, but don't feel good. The pulse is affected. You could start throwing up. You're definitely going to have the cramps, tired, dizzy, headache, and even passing out. So bad situation altogether. You need to go into a cool place, shade if you're outside. If you can get to air conditioning, you need to get to air conditioning. That's the best place. And then the cool wet clause is the best thing if we had to pick between drinking or cooling somebody down or going in air conditioning. When we put water on the body like a wet cloth, that helps us evaporate very much quicker than just loosening clothing or moving to a cold place. So that's actually really, really helpful, getting any fabric wet and putting it anywhere that you can on the person. I usually go with the neck, and there's 5 points on the body: the underarms and the groin, the two legs where they come into the hips. So these 5 points are, if we think of our lymphatic system, that's the system in the body that is flowing all of our liquids back and forth. And we definitely need to cool the brain. And what we're doing is, because all this stuff is moving around in our body, all of our liquids, if I put it on those central points, it's like a train station where it's coming in, where it's hot, and then it's getting cooled, and then it's cool as it goes to the next spot on our body. So if you have to pick, you want to pick one of those 5 spots, or all 5 spots. They're totally fine. And I work with athletes as a medic, and that's definitely what we do. If they come and they just feel horrible, whether they were exercising outside or inside, they can get this. And right away, I'm just I usually have ice baths ready, but I'm just throwing wet towels first on their neck, and then I'll give them ice packs in armpits and groin and throw them in front of a fan and see if that works. So if somebody starts throwing up or passes out or doesn't recover within like 15 minutes of trying to get cooled off, yeah, go to the hospital. Don't mess around with that. Sometimes
Do you mind, sorry to interrupt, but just, do you
Yeah.
remind one more time? So it's the neck, the armpits, the groin, and there were 2 other points.
Oh, just because there's 2
Oh, got it.
2 groin. Yeah, so it's 5, and that's where I just, like I said, I think of it like a train station. Those are the spots where our arms come in and where our legs come in to our
Got it.
torso. So it's like your 5 exit points of your torso. And if you think of your blood like going down to your feet and coming back up, so we just want everything that's coming into the torso to be cooled. We don't care so much about the arms and legs.
Got
So
it. Thank you.
that's how we think of it, is just kind of hitting these entrance and exit points, and that's the quickest way to cool down the body. So it doesn't matter if I'm putting ice on their feet, that's got to go down and come back up, that kind of thing. So definitely just the quickest way. You can do the front of the neck, side, back is quickest, but anywhere on the neck is fine. So and also, like I said, with athletes, we will have actual ice baths, like tubs, that just look like something you'd have on a farm, a metal tub, and we keep the water 40 degrees. It's like a refrigerator, and we just keep putting ice in it. And so people will just get in there, especially if we're doing the outdoor, like 5K kind of stuff, and it's 100 degrees, which is crazy. But if people are choosing to do that, then that's how I cool people down quickly, is we get in the ice tub for like 5 minutes, and then they're able to control their body temperature better. So heat stroke, absolute emergency. This is when the person stops sweating. So that's probably your first clue that we're absolutely having an emergency. When I'm working at events, I will check their temperature, but if you don't have that, you're gonna just feel, and of course, if they feel hot, like ridiculously hot, then they can have a fever. The pulse is affected, and they're just gonna be losing it, just feel sick, throwing up, passing out. And I've seen this too, of course, in the sporting events with our masters categories, where they're over 60, 65, 70, and they're running these 5Ks, which is amazing. But, they'll get themselves to the finish line out of like pure will, and then they will pass out, and they like don't know where they are. They're talking nonsense. And again, we just pick them up and throw them in these ice baths. And I don't recommend doing this, but people are, signing up for it, but this is how I treat it. So if you do have a child, you're doing some hikes and you thought everything was going to be great, and you brought some water and some snacks and everything, and they're just not coping with it. They could have had their sunburn already, or they could have had, an underlying cold or something that's just affecting them more than you thought. We just want you to recognize that this is an emergency if we get to that point. We don't want you to ignore the heat cramps and the heat exhaustion, because it does go, it's linear, it just starts and it keeps going. But if you've missed it somehow, and also, of course, you can just get to it really quick. Like if you're like, I'm totally fine, I'm in this air conditioned building, and then I'm stretching and I've warmed up and I've decided to go run this 5K, you're putting yourself in that situation and you're ignoring all of these other signs because you've decided to run this race. But we're just at this point throwing the person in water. It doesn't matter, dressed, undressed. I throw the people with their clothes on, we lift them, and we just put them right in these ice baths that we have right at the finish line. I don't give them anything to drink when they're not making any sense, because they can choke. But you're calling 911 at that point. Now, the events I work at have physicians and sports physicians available, so we can treat right there on site and do IVs if we have to. But if you see this in a child passing out, vomiting, and they feel hot, and you've been outside and they're not sweating, absolute emergency. You can put them in a lake, a pool, a shower, and just turn on the water. It doesn't matter. We just need whole body water at this point. And it really, you don't even have to have ice water. It just needs to be water. We're not going to do hot water, of course, but even water that's 70 or 80 degrees in a pool is going to be lower than their body temperature, and that will cool them down. And you'll have, you know, that's what you're doing in the 5 minutes while you're waiting for the ambulance to come, is just completely cooling their body down. So this was everything we reviewed for our CPR: the chest compressions, the ratio for children and infants, 15 with 2 rescue breaths, adults would be 30 and 2. And if you have an AED, they're very easy to use. You just turn it on and listen and do what it says. It will tell you what to do. If you have a mask, you can do your rescue breaths. And if you don't, you can do mouth to mouth if you want to, if you know, you choose to, and that's a loved one and you're okay with it. Choking, we're going to try abdominal thrusts once they stop coughing or making noise. And infants, we can do the chest thrust, which is the same as a chest compression, and back slaps. We can alternate that. And so I would say with our heat exhaustion, this is our most important rule. We always hear of this on the news. Never leave kids or pets or elderly too in a car, even if you think it's okay, because people will just leave the window cracked a little bit or something, but it's not okay. Don't do it. And you know, if you ever see that, you need to just call 911 and break the windows to help them. All right, we're going to look at the website, and I will show you where to put this code. So we're going to savealife.com, and I'm going to put this in the chat because it's a different website. So it's NHCPS, which is National Healthcare Provider Solutions, which is our other just corporate sponsor for our savealife.com. But you can also Google savealife.com or go to savealife.com and it will redirect you here. So this is where you're going to get your CPR certification. You go through the course. There is a test at the end. You need to get an 80%, which you can take it as many times as you want. You can look things up. We want you to pass. This also includes first aid and CPR for adults, children, and infants. And then right away, you'll be able to download, once you pass your test, your card or certificate, and you will be CPR certified for 2 years. And the code is helper CPR. I put that in the chat also. It's just HELPR CPR all together. No spaces. I don't think it matters if it's capitalized or not. And I also want to show you just our free resources up here, this button. We do have courses for healthcare providers, which are BLS, ACLS, and PALS. That's a different code. So your code will work for CPR. And if you do want to take a bloodborne pathogens course, you just have to email me for the code. There are practice tests, mega codes, and algorithms. Oh, I sent it to panelists. Thank you for saying that. Let me do it again.
I can do it. One sec.
You got it? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just realized I sent it to the wrong person. Algorithms. Oh, and last 2 things. We do have a mobile app, which is Medicode, and it's free. It's in your app store. And this has all the courses, but you can look things up, and it has the first aid. You can use it in an emergency. And also, you know, even the first aid, if you're like, I don't know what to do with a nosebleed, you can look it up on here. So this is a great resource. And then we have ebooks, which I have written. So there's a 50-page book here on CPR. You can download, keep it on your computer, or print it out. That's a full color CPR and first aid book that you can use for free. So that's the website. I know you guys are smart enough to, let's see, if I just go to your checkout, there is going to be a spot to put the code in, like right here. You would put the code in, and then it will take the price out of your CPR and put it at 0. So you just do that in your checkout cart. Can I answer any questions for you? Can everybody see the code and the website now. And like I said, you can Google savealife.com. If you just Google Save a Life, you get the song. So you got to Google savealife.com instead. Does anybody have any CPR or heat injury questions?
So let's see. Looks like not thus far, none in the Q&A, none in the chat. Mostly just about getting the code.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that was really timely and great. And I really appreciated this one as all of them. But this is stuff that is happening so regularly, even just any event you attend in the summer, right? There's always someone who's experiencing some of these symptoms. So it's great to be able to be of support now. So thank you so much. Oh, it's actually, we have one question. Just to clarify, for a 7-month-old, should we use one hand for CPR compressions or 2 to 3 fingers?
Yeah, so the recommendation for infants under 12 months is 2 to 3 fingers. But I always tell people, nobody's measuring, nobody's getting out a camera and checking. If you want to use one hand, use one hand. If it's, a bigger child, and 7 months is more halfway, but if we're getting closer to 12 months or they're like 20 pounds already or whatever, it just kind of depends. You really are thinking of, if we're looking at this child from the side and they're laying down, we don't want to go halfway down. We're going a third, which I said, we're not measuring, but that's to help us remember we're not going halfway down. So you're just thinking and you might try it one way and then try it over. Yeah, that one's I just looked here too. Somebody tried a code. You got to make sure you're doing CPR, which should not be, they said 179. You're on the wrong one. So try CPR, which is $59 normally.
It says I need CPR is the link, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure you're picking CPR. If you pick one of the other courses, the code won't work. Yeah, so just make sure you're on the right one. Yeah. Any other questions?
Seems like we're good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time, and to the DISC Foundation always. You guys are amazing. Such a cool foundation or organization. So yeah, everyone, thank you for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions. Please also feel free, if you have any questions related to the program or other programming you'd like to see, safety topics, really anything. It's Jude-Ann, Jude. I'll put it in the chat right now. At Helper, and she will be happy to field those questions too. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right, bye. Have a good day.
Bye, you too.